Stay.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed those of the host and guest, and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are all over this planet. Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. 3 ways that you can get in contact with the show. You can go to Facebook.com/Talktainment, where you can see and you can hear us. And there's a like button there. You can hit the like button, and there's a comment button you can also hit there, as Kim Joshua Jones has just done from Dallas. They asked me to mention that and to mention your shout out, so I will do that when I can. I don't want to take away from the show, but that's what they asked me to do. And so I will try to comply with that. You can also reach the show by calling 1-877-932-9766. And you can also do this. You can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby at gmail.com. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, my Gmail box is full, and they are on a first-come, first-served basis. So when you write me by Gmail, it may be a long time before I get to them, but I will get to them because now it is set up where it goes into an automatic rotation. So please do not email me and say, when am I going to get to your question? I will get to it as soon as it comes up on rotation. And that all depends on you, and also depends on how much time Mr. Fuller addresses to the questions that come across that way, and also your phone calls, and also on the screen here that I'm constantly looking at. Good morning, Mario Watts. Yes. Okay, we are in the third installment speaking on sex in the system of racism, white supremacy. For those of you new to the show, Mr. Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And later on in the show, I think about 15 minutes until the 10 o'clock hour, we will have him further discuss his book. Okay, I think that is about due. Let me start off by saying good morning, Mr. Fuller. How are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, Mr. Dwan Anderson. Let's do this. Let's start off with a question this morning. Comes from Lawson, Dr. Lawson. He says this: Mr. Fuller, is the first step to clearing confusion is to admit you are confused?
Absolutely. If a person is confused about anything, or if a person is in any state of mind, the first step toward understanding yourself, in order to understand the world around you, you have to first know how you think, and why you think the way that you think, and why you do the things that you do, or ask questions about these things, and then everything flows from there. You should do that every day and find out if you are confused, because confusion is nothing but a lack of knowledge and understanding. That's all it is. And so you're supposed to be in a mode of trying to know and understand everything that pertains to anything of any importance all the time. And that's doing here on the planet as creatures who are called people.
Okay. All righty. All right. So, JR, there is your question addressed by Mr. Fuller. Talani Dixon from Mount Vernon, Washington, thank you for checking in. Also, Demetrius Frank. Going on, as we are in the 8th area of people activity, one more question from the Gmail. This comes from, Green Market. It says this, Mr. Neely Fuller, the white supremacists use the so-called superhero movie as a mechanism to establish the white male as the most dominant and sexually desired being on the planet for men and women. All attempts to counter this have been unsuccessful. Would producing movies that demonize and expose the codified system of white supremacy be the correct response to counter their manipulation?
Well, it's a matter of your choice of words now. You're not trying to demonize anything. You're just trying to reveal the truth. So any movie that is made that reveals truth in such a way that people learn constructive lessons, every movie that people make, every story that people write, anything in art, entertainment, should be for the purpose of inspiring people, motivating people to, first of all, search for the truth in order to learn how to better produce a product called justice and or correctness in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And when you look at a movie, in every scene in a movie, regardless of what the scene is, you should think in terms of, now what can I learn from this that I can use to make the world the type of place that it ought to be? What can I learn from this particular scene? What can I learn from the scene that came before this particular scene? What can I learn for the scenes that have come after this particular scene? That's whether you're looking at a stage play or you're listening to a song. What can I learn from this song that may be of some constructive value?
All righty. Okay. Well, let's do this. By the way, Demetrius Frank, thank you, from Detroit, Michigan. And again, Talani Dixon from Mount Vernon, Washington. Boy, that's up at 3 in the morning, or rather 6 in the morning out there. Starting in the textbook or workbook for thought, speech, and action, and/or action for victims of this, let's go to Mr. Fuller, page number 280, starting off. And in the middle of the book, you wrote a question that I would like you to address. And the question reads, does every person in the known universe have a serious sex problem?
Well, the way I've answered that in the book comes right after that question, is the answer is yes. Yes. The question is, does every person in the known universe have a serious sex problem? Yes. Oh. And I go on to explain, according to logic, hopefully it's according to logic, every person in the known universe is at all times either engaging in sexual intercourse and or sexual play, that's something leading up to possible sexual intercourse, or something that sort of involves the thoughts of sexual intercourse or something associated with it. Or every person in the known universe is at all times either engaging in sexual intercourse and or sexual play, or he or she is directly or indirectly reacting to those who are so engaged. Either way, all such actions and reactions produce problems. And then I go on to explain Why is this?
Yes.
Every person in the known universe has a serious sex problem. That's the question.
Yes.
So, the explanation is everything associated with sexual intercourse, sexual play, and all the reactions of sexual intercourse or sexual play, and everything associated with homosex or lesbian sex, so-called, produces serious problems in one form or another. All of these problems collectively help to make the problem of replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice extremely difficult. The system of white supremacy guarantees, now here's the main line.
Okay.
The system of white supremacy guarantees that no form of sexually related activity will produce correct relations between people as long as white supremacy exists. Now that's the main thing to remember and answer that question. Does every person in the known universe have a serious sex problem?
Wow.
And that bottom line answer in the explanation is the system of white supremacy itself guarantees that no form of sexually related activity will correct relations between people as long as white supremacy exists. Why? Because white supremacy distorts and corrupts everything and all the people in all 9 areas of activity, sex included.
Okay. A question has come up from Talani Dixon. Can you tell us, Mr. Fuller, why we as black people need to have a code and engage in a constructive way each other and everyone else in the unknown universe?
Oh, because we don't have a code. A code is nothing but a way of going about doing things that make sure that everything works the way it should. That's all a code is, as a brief description, as a right-to-the-point description. What is a code? A code is nothing but a way of thought, thinking, speaking, and acting. In order to do what? In order to do something. Now, the white supremacists have the most successful code, political code, and religious code, the most powerful that is in recorded history, because it is the dominant political and religious force in the world. And the reason it's dominant, the reason it's successful, is because it's codified. What the white supremacists do is very precise.
Yes.
And it works. See, if you do something and it's not working and you to do what it is you're trying to do, then you don't have the code for doing what you're trying to do. That's just like a code for a key and a lock. I understand locksmiths have said that there is a code that you have to follow for each key, and you have to have a lock that when you put the key in the lock, that lock has to fit. That's what we call it. The key and the lock have to fit. They have to work together. So there's a code that guarantees that. That's why when you keep putting your key in that lock, it always works.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of the significant factors, the most significant factors of a code. When you do it, it always works.
It always works. Okay.
So there's a fire code, a plumbing code, a locksmith code for each key and each lock, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. By the way, Tonali Dixon from the Facebook.com/Talktainment line, you did say unknown, but then you corrected it by saying known. But Mr. Fuller did answer your question. Daryl Wesson, I am going to answer, or have Mr. Fuller answer your question after this. Talktimate Radio is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, politics. And now here are a few that I'd like to share with you. All in the Family. No, not that one. This one from Talktimate Radio. All in the Family. Everlasting Life. And Pastor O Speaks. Now, all these shows are exclusive to TalkTimeRadio.com, and that's where you have to go to our homepage, TalkTimeRadio.com. Click on Programs for the scheduled times. By the way, when you click on there, I do believe, hey, Ed, is that donate button still there on there? Yeah, someone asked me about that. The donate button is also there. Just click on that if you want to. We do accept donations all year round. I bring that up because someone did ask me about that, so there you go. Anyway, Talktimate Radio, that's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We are in the 8th area of people activity, which is sex. We are taking your calls, reading your Gmails, and having Mr. Fuller address that. You can get in contact with the show by going to facebook.com/Talktimate, or you can and then hit the like button, and also you can leave a comment. You can dial 1-877-932-9766, or the Gmail at the numeral 7, MrBobby@gmail.com. Let's see. Daryl Wesson wrote this. He says, "What about groping? We got a black man who, because he's a 60-year-old virgin, never established normal relations with a female, and to cope, he goes around groping random women, and then keeps getting getting put in jail, and that's it because it's cut off." What about that, Mr. Fuller? A 60-year-old? What about groping? A 60-year-old black man who is a virgin and never established normal relationship with a female, to cope, so he goes around groping random women, and then keeps being put in jail.
And they say he was put in jail?
Yeah, he keeps getting put in jail.
Yes, well, he needs help. I mean, in fact, he should be put in some type of psychiatric program where he can correct that behavior. That's incorrect behavior. All behavior is either correct or incorrect.
Okay.
And what he's doing, regardless of the reason, is incorrect. So it's got to be a reason why he's doing what he's doing. Now, someone who is, schooled in trying to make that correction should step forward and make the correction in his behavior. People do things all the time. I mean, small things, large things, grotesque things, or whatever you want to call it, that always fall in one of two categories: correct, incorrect. I mean, you can raise a question: is smoking a cigarette correct, or is it incorrect? Well, you look at the results. If it's not producing something constructive, if it's not causing people to behave in a better manner, in a constructive manner, not destroying anything, then it's correct. If it's improving things. If it's not improving things, then that's to be taken out of that person's code, you might say. See, everything in a code should produce a constructive result. And a person going around groping females, I mean, because they have one of the many so-called sex problems, that's incorrect behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't produce a constructive effect. See, just look at it like that. Everything is either constructive or non-constructive. Every move that a person makes all day long, minute by minute, is going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. That is the best way to scientifically and logically look at it and act accordingly.
Okay. Let's see, Carmon Ford. I'm looking at this screen here. It says if you click on the more link on the comment screen, it'll show you the full content of the comment. You know what? I don't see that on here, because, and I'm afraid to touch this, because if I do, unless you have it back there, if I do, it might go blank. So I'm not going to do that, but maybe they can do that in the back. I don't even have my mouse up here to do that. Anyway, I did get your question, Carmen. Okay, Mr. Fuller, on page 281, and hello to Mario Watts from Cleveland. In the middle of the page, on page 281 of the revised and expanded edition, here's a question. It says, during the existence of white supremacy, when exactly is a non-white person, quote, sexually mature?
Question is, during the existence of white supremacy, when exactly is a non-white person sexually mature? Answer: at no time. During the existence of white supremacy, all non-white people are forced to function as children. During the existence of white supremacy, all non-white people are forced to function as children. And the white supremacists are their illegitimate parents. So, as a subject child of the white supremacists, no non-white person can function as a mature person in any area of activity, including sex. Oh. Non-white people are not mature people. We can't be mature people. The white supremacists do not allow maturity of any kind, including sexual maturity, among non-white people of this planet during the existence of white supremacy. That's why that system needs to be replaced with a better system.
Someone's going to ask.
Doesn't allow me, as a black male, regardless of how old I get, to be anything but a child, because they keep me in a childlike position.
Okay.
And that is, I'm not sexually mature or economically mature or pick any area of activity. Politically mature, religiously mature, I'm mature in economics, in education. I don't have the type of education that I should have in the system of white supremacy. They teach me things that should not be taught because it's in support of the system of white supremacy. They don't teach me the things that are necessary where I can grow into maturity. They teach me just enough to be in service to the system of racism and nothing beyond that. So I'm not a mature person. I'm a non-white person, and it's impossible for me to be mature in the system of white supremacy. I'm kept in a childlike state. I'm a prisoner of war.
Yes, sir. Okay, you are getting a lot of likes, Mr. Fuller. Kim Joshua Jones from Dallas checked in, and also David, okay, thank you. Woo. And also Marino Watts from Cleveland checked in. Okay, now, this is a question from my Gmail, and I'm going to read it just as it is. Mr. Fuller, this comes from Mr. Palmer. He says this, just as is. Can you ask Mr. Fuller, when you are using your emotions to lead to logic, what is actually needs to be happening while you are depersonalizing the issue? You have said it is not about personalities. It is about the constructive result. How do you personalize the issues without being distracted by personalities?
Oh, well, you focus all the time on logic. Logic is nothing but cause and effect. And you're always looking for the most constructive effect. You look at the cause of something that's happening, if you can find out the cause, like any disease, whatnot, look for the cause of the disease and the effect of the disease, and then try to come up with a formula that will counteract the disease by looking at the cause of it. That's what a doctor does. That's what a scientist does. And it's the same thing in everything else. Just cause and effect. Follow the logic. That's what logic is about. Looking into things, cause and effect. What causes this? What is the effect of the cause? I mean, fire will burn, water is wet. All right? And then you might look into, why does fire burn? What are the elements that go into fire, if you can find out, whatnot. And somebody had to find out something like that in order to make a thing called a match.
Yes.
Yes, you can do certain things. You can arrange certain chemicals in such a way that you can have the potential for fire at the end of a small stick. Somebody had to figure that out. See, cause and effect. What are the things that you do? The things that you don't do? The things that are dangerous to do? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's in anything. And you have to do this by what? Studying. Doing some thinking. Everything in codification, first of all, starts with thinking.
Thinking.
Thinking, using your mind. That's whether you're talking about fire or whether you're talking about taking a knee at a football game.
Yes, sir. All right. I think you say that best when I ask you, how are you doing? You always say, I'm still learning.
Yes. Always be in a learning mode. There's no such thing as being out of school. There's no such thing as finishing school. Your mind is supposed to be working as long as you're breathing. You came here with your mind working.
Okay.
That's not supposed to ever stop. You're not ever supposed to stop thinking. Thinking about what? Thinking about how to do what? Solve problems. Why? Why are you supposed to be thinking about solving problems? Because you have problems.
Because you have problems.
You're surrounded by problems. Mm-hmm. You came into a world that's full of problems. That's why babies come here, I think, logically speaking, they don't come here laughing. They come here crying. Why? Because they can sense. And there's a message being sent to their brains, even before they even know where they are, that things are out of order here.
Out of order in terms that they're not balanced. Is that correct?
Out of order in the entire universe that baby is introduced to.
Yes.
And so that baby, therefore, has a duty to start solving those problems right from the crib. And the baby instinctively starts doing that. The baby starts trying to figure out how to stand up in the crib.
That's true.
Because the baby has tools for standing up, like legs and feet. And the baby, over a period of time, will kind of figure that out itself. It'll stand up and then fall down and cry again because that's disappointment setting in. And then the baby keeps trying, which is what you're never supposed to turn loose to that principle.
Still learning.
You still learn and you keep trying.
Yes. All righty. Dwayne Anderson from Indian Rocks Beach, Florida is in there with a bunch of likes for you, Mr. Fuller. We're getting ready to go to break, but before we do, on page 281, I want you to ponder these questions. Let's see here. It says here at the bottom, what are the 3 things that you should definitely not do in regards to sexual intercourse? We'll have Mr. Fuller address that when we come back. TalkTameRadio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on 94.1 WGRN. Podcasts are available. Download the TalkTameRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. We're going to have Mr. Fuller address these questions and more of your Gmails and calls. All that on TalkTameRadio.com. Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. In about 15 minutes or less, we will have him discuss all the particulars on the book, but we are discussing the 8th area of people activity, that is sex, and we ended the last segment with 3 questions, or a question rather, that we would like for Mr. Fuller to address. If you are going to follow along with us, you can in the revised extended edition of the concept book. The question near the bottom of the page, Mr. Fuller, page 281, says, what are the 3 things that you should definitely not do in regards to sexual intercourse?
The 3 things that you should definitely not do, according to logic, in regards to sexual intercourse are as follows. Do not be hypocritical in anything that you say or do in regards to anything that involves sexual intercourse and your chosen religion. In other words, do not be involved in any type of sexual intercourse or anything involved in sexual intercourse that is against your chosen religion. Because then that nullifies or eradicates your religion. You need to change your religion and get another one and whatnot, because that's no longer your religion if you do anything. If you're going to be hypocritical in regards to your religion, in regards to sexual intercourse of any kind, what does your religion require you to do? Religions require you to do something. Religions are strong beliefs backed up by what? Action. A religion is just not a strong belief because you don't have proof of your strong belief unless you back up that with action. Most religions have a rules or so-called laws of that religion. So don't be hypocritical about anything.
Okay, don't be hypocritical.
As best you can, right. I mean, because now you're getting away from the truth.
Okay.
There's nothing worse than lying to yourself. Okay?
Yes.
All right, the next thing is, do not engage in sexual intercourse with a white person as long as white supremacy exists. Now, what's the reason for that? It's because it supports the system of white supremacy. It makes it stronger. And makes the victim of white supremacy weaker. Why? Because the non-white person is in the position of a child. And so that you equate that, according to logic, with child abuse on the part of the white person, regardless of the intent. It's child abuse because the non-white person is in the position of a child in the system of white supremacy. That's the way that works.
Okay.
Now, number 3, do not say or do anything that you believe may help racist man and racist woman to gain greater power over any non-white person in any area of activity, particularly in matters associated with sex. Now, that's very difficult to avoid, if not impossible, but you do your best.
Yes,
do
sir.
not say or do anything that you believe may help racist man and racist woman to become stronger over any non-white person in any area of activity, and particularly when it comes to anything sexual. You avoid that. You avoid giving them any kind of strength, if you can. And you make that very clear that you're not going to do that. I mean, you're not going to help to make what is already in place stronger.
Okay.
The system of white supremacy. You're supposed to be doing those things that will make it what? Weaker.
Weaker.
And then replace it with what? A better system.
Right.
A system of justice.
System of justice. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. What line are we going to? Line number 3? Okay. Line number 3, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Go ahead, please. Oh, line number 1? Okay, line number 1. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I don't want to, I'm going to try to keep this brief because I don't want to get off the topic where you're dealing with the 8th area of activity, but I'm going to take back to another area of activity, which is, I guess this will fall into politics. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because we're heading toward election season, and something that's been burning me is the term, a cliche, I should say, that I know Mr. Fuller also says he doesn't like, and it's the cliche that we hear a lot of, which is holding them accountable. And as we head into election season, we're going to hear this term more and more. And like I said, I know you said you don't not like it. And my question to you would be, what then, in your estimation, would be a good compensatory replacement definition for this term, holding them accountable, whether that's elected officials or public officials or just people in general? We, particularly as people, tend to use this term as if that is some form of power that I can actually do that, when most of the times we never do. So what, in your estimation, again, would be a quality compensatory replacement definition for that term that has become overly used?
Okay, thank you for your question. Mr. Fuller?
Oh, all right, thank you.
Well, the way you deal with any word or any combination of words, you want to know exactly what they mean. So how do you find that out? You ask the person who uses the term. The combination of words or a word. Always pay attention to words. So what the person is saying, and I hear it over and over again, well, we got to hold these elected officials accountable. We got to hold these elected officials accountable. After a 3-day conference, and you're looking for a solution, you can go somewhere, and I've been in many a meeting where people use that term over and over again. Well, what we got to do is hold these elected officials accountable. Okay, but I have never been in a position where I was asked to speak, and make a comment at any of these meetings. But if I were allowed to speak or asked to speak, my codified response would be the logical response. What do you mean when you say hold them accountable? By doing what? See, it always comes down to the doing part.
Yes, sir.
See, that's a very abstract phrase, and people use it over and over again, as if, by the time you get to the parking lot, you say, now, I got to hold my elected official accountable. But they didn't tell me by doing what? Hold them what? Hold them by the foot? Hold them by the arm? Get a headlock on them? What? What are you talking about? Hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. And a person will sit up and make an hour-long speech and then say, well, now the solution to everything that I just said in this 1 hour is that we got to hold our elected officials accountable. And then they sit down and everybody applauds and goes home exhausted after waiting 3 days for that one line to be given as a solution to everything. Hold those elected officials accountable. So in answer to your question, ask the question. Hold them accountable by doing, underline doing what? Give me the 1, 2, 3. Do this, number 1. Do this, number 2. Do this, number 3. So that we can leave here with something, sir or ma'am. I mean, we just can't keep having these exhausting meetings where after, people fly in on airplanes and check in the hotels. And what we come away with after 3 days is hold elected officials accountable. You bug your eyes and look serious and whatnot, and then sit down. That is not a solution to anything, in my opinion, according to what? Logic.
Logic, yes, sir. Okay, let's see here. Let's do this. We are going to go to page 282 of the revised expanded edition here on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I'm your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Remember, you can go to facebook.com/Talktainment to see and hear us. Hit the like button. You can also call us by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. If you do that, that's last on the list, so it'll be a while before I get to your questions. But before we do that, Mr. Fuller, this is the time where we have set aside for you to speak about your book. So the floor is yours.
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's what we have been reading. We've been reading in the basic book, the Revised Expanded Edition 2016, today, in the 8th area of activity. And the things that I've been saying about the area of sex come right out of this book. These are the words that are in the book. I paraphrase some things, but basically the words are in the book. And you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. You go to producejustice.com, and what will come up on the screen is a method for ordering the basic textbook and also a word guide. And in this word guide, you have everything, discussing sex and whatnot, some possible questions that can be asked in the use of words, etc., in a counter-racist fashion, in other words, in a codified fashion, in a logical fashion, hopefully, that will help to solve problems. Even terms in there about flags, and terms in there about what would pertain to patriotism, because that's in the news now. What is patriotism? How do you use the word patriot? And what should it mean within a counter-racist context?
Yes, sir.
And what does the flag mean? What do you say about the flag? How do you make a pledge to the flag? This is in one and or both all these textbooks. You can get them by going to producejustice.com.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Let's see here. Remember, go to facebook.com/talktainment, where you can see and you can also hear us. You can also dial 1-877-932-9766. And you can go also do this, Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com. And I will eventually get to your question. It is in rotation. It is set up where it automatically goes first come, first serve. So if you ask a question, it is probably not going to be answered today, but on an up-and-coming show it will be. Before we get off your book, Mr. Fuller, someone Gmailed me, I think it was last week, and they were speaking about pages 58, 59, 60, or 61 in the old book before you wrote the revised expanded edition. Now I don't have the old translation anymore, so I don't know what they made mention to. I guess one of the questions is the old book still relevant?
Yes, everything in it still can be used if you choose to use it. That's another thing. I'm pleased that you pointed this out. The book should be used by an individual person, and you just turn to any page and pick out something that you think you can use in any area of activity. You got 9 areas of activity. That's just how the book is segmented, starting with in alphabetical order.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in alphabetical order.
Yes, sir.
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. I call those the 9 major areas of activity that covers just about everything that a person is involved in at one minute or another, each and every day. Because all of these areas of activity, by the way, according to logic, are interactive.
Okay.
What affects politics affects economics. What affects economics affects religion. What affects religion affects sex. What affects sex affects labor and entertainment, etc. And so, in the old book is still valid.
Okay.
You can still use it if you find something in the book that you can use.
Okay.
That's why I wrote it. I mean, I tried to write the book that as long as this problem called white supremacy exists, then everything in the book may or may not, depending on what your circumstances are, be used by you. That's why it's called the United Independents.
Yes, sir. Yes.
You choose what you can use, and the things you can't use, just ignore it.
Okay.
That's the way the book is written.
Okay.
Just pick out something that you can use, and if you can use it to serve the purpose of making your situation what it ought to be, use it.
Okay. So the book is designed, even the old book is designed still to be relevant, even though we are in the expanded.
Yes, those who have the old book, the 1984 version, use the book, pick it up, look through it. Economics, page 58, 59, and 60 is under economics, which refers to basically the use of your time and energy.
Yes.
Which is what economics is.
Yes.
According to the code.
Okay.
All right? So how do you use your time and energy? And on the first page itself of instructions for it, it says, or rather, I don't remember whether it's on the first page, but on 58, 59, and 60 on the economics, it says there are 4 things that you can do to use your time and energy. So turn to 58, 59, and 60, and you're supposed to be doing one of those 4 things at any given time. And anything outside of that should be, according to you, you make your own judgment, should be something that you need to question why you're doing it.
Okay. All
because
right.
Just 4 things, if you're a non-white person on this planet in the system of white supremacy, you're supposed to be involved in doing one of those 4 things at any given time.
Okay. I'm going to take this phone call, but one more quick question on that. The old publication is no longer in existence where a person can purchase it. Everything is now the revised expanded edition, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The revised expanded edition.
Okay.
It's the only one that's now on sale.
Okay.
But in the future, I may make some republications of the older book.
Okay.
Even though a lot of what is in the new book, the 2016 version, the same thing was taken right out of the older book, the 1984 version.
Yes, sir.
That's why I called it a revised and expanded.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay, got it.
I just took what was in the older book and added a lot.
Okay.
Right.
Got it. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Line 3? Okay. Line 3, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hey, good morning, Mr. Fuller and Mr. Bobby.
Morning.
Okay. There's a question that was on my mind for the past few weeks. It's kind of trying to dig deeper in a concept Mr. Fuller stated. So, as a victim of white supremacy, males or females can't be men or women. So, my question is, is it like a chicken and an egg thing? Am I a man after the system of white supremacy has ended? Or when I decide to fight against white supremacy, is that asserting my manhood?
The question is what now?
Can I be a man while fighting the system of white supremacy? Do I have to wait until it's ended to then be a man?
Well, you're showing some signs of wanting to be a man while you're fighting. In other words, it's just like, look at it within this context. This is the best way. This is why I give this illustration all the time. Consider yourself a prisoner of war. Because according to logic and all evidence, you are. Because there's a war against non-white people by those white people, not all white people, but those white people who have chosen to practice white supremacy. And so they have already captured the non-white people of this entire planet. All of the people who are classified as non-white, black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige, etc. We are born in a prison. So as a prisoner of war, you're put in a childlike position. You know, that's why people make people prisoners. They take away their manhood. They take away their womanhood and make them into what? They render them by their position, by your position, into immature people, boys and girls, completely dependent on what? The prison masters. So you might be trying to evolve by breaking out of the prison or destroying the prison, or breaking down the prison, which is what you should be doing, actually eliminating the prison, because there's no way to break out of it. You should eliminate the prison itself and set up something that's not a prison, because this prison never should have existed in the first place, the system of white supremacy. That's the name of the prison. So you evolve out of that by working against it, but you're not a man while you're trying to do it, because you're still trying to do it. It's just like a boy trying to become a man. Well, he'll be trying to become a man until he gets to manhood, meaning he's able to manage now. Man means manage. Now he is able to do things on his own. Woman, the womb of man, same thing. She's able to do things on her own. She's no longer a girl. She's mature now. But the white supremacist system keep you in a state of immaturity, a state of childhood, as a prisoner of war, so that the managers of the system of white supremacy are supreme over you in all of these areas of activity. But you're not a man as long as you are subject to that system. You're either a prisoner or you're not. There's no such thing as in between. You can't be a half prisoner. You're either a prisoner or you're not. As long as you're subject to white supremacy, you can't be a man and you can't be a woman. Well, we've been rendered boys and girls.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Fuller, you made mention of this term that's been in the news quite a bit lately, in referencing, I guess, a few moments ago. You mentioned the term taking a knee. In the remaining moments that we have in the first hour, so people can stay tuned for the second hour, what did you mean, or what is Mr. Fuller's concept of taking a knee?
Well, this is something in the news. I don't have this in my word guide or nowhere in my book. That's something that a football player, I understand, did, and people have called in on this program and talked about. So codification is about talking about anything that people want to talk about that has to do with making the world the type of place it should be. So I understand that somebody took a knee at a football game. And so I'm saying pay attention to words. Now, a person was accused of taking a knee, okay? Well, first of all, you look at the words, take a knee. What do you mean, take a knee? All right? They say, well, the person who was on that football field, he went down on one knee so that one knee was on the ground and the other knee wasn't. So the logical question is, so why did the person do that? Now, from what I understand, the person explained, I took a knee because it had something to do, to the best of my knowledge. Now, somebody else can talk about this, because I'm not familiar with exactly the reason for the taking the knee was. It said, in response to racism and police brutality. Now, so whomever is taking the knee can explain why he or she took the knee. And if that's the answer, that is the answer. You always accept the person's answer or explanation for what they do.
Okay.
What the person does. So that's the only thing I have to say about taking the knee. But I have a list of words here that I might, in the second hour, can talk about, that I made up myself, that I heard from what I heard on television in connection with this taking a knee.
Yeah, we want to address that. Right now, talk to him at radio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for the second hour.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. Talktainmentradio.com. Talktainment Radio.
Worldwide sound.
Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come.
The world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning again, especially to our West Coast people. This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby. We are on every Wednesday from 9 a.m. Eastern Time until 11 a.m. We invite you to listen and even call into the show by going to Facebook.com/Talktainment, or you can call me or the studio by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com, as Miss Woods just did. Keep in mind that when you do Gmail me, it will go into rotation and it will come up on a first come, first served basis, and there are many in there. When did the last hour, Mr. Fuller was explaining the take a knee that was brought up in the first hour, or the taking of a knee. He had his thoughts on that. He mentioned about some words, or a list of words that I'm going to have him do or give. In that, the person that you were referring to about taking a knee was Colin Kaepernick, and he started off, Mr. Fuller, sitting on the bench, and they got on him for sitting on the bench during the national anthem, and then they asked him why was he doing that, and then he explained that it was in reference to the police brutality, as you stated, as he had stated, and the mistreatment of black folks. And then he got together with a Navy SEAL by the name of, I believe it was Nate Boyd or Boyer, and they were speaking, and Mr. Boyer or Boyd indicated that the best way that he could honor the service people or personnel was to take a knee. So he began to take a knee, and the white supremacists got on him for not only sitting during the national anthem, but now taking a knee during the national anthem. You know, just to give you a little brief history. So what say you by that, when he can't stand up or sit down and peacefully protest, and now he's taking a knee peacefully protesting, and they're on him for that?
Okay, yeah. In other words, if I understand you correctly, the first act was someone sat on a bench.
Yes, Mr. Kaepernick, former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, in protest, which he said, of the mistreatment and police brutality and mistreatment of black folks. And then okay.
Now, the second act was taking a expression called taking a knee. Taking
a knee. He said he got that from a Navy SEAL by the name of Mr. Boyd, Nate Boyd, told him the best way that Kaepernick could honor the military or the SEALs was by taking a knee during the national anthem if he was going to protest, which he has done, and he's catching all kind of hell for doing that.
Oh, okay. So these are two acts that were committed.
Yes.
First act, sitting on a bench.
Yes.
All right. That's sitting. And the other one was something called taking a knee.
Yes, sir.
I guess it was his knee. He didn't take anybody else's knee.
Yes, sir.
I mean, to run off the field with it. I mean, that would be assault or something, or theft or something. And And so he put one knee on the ground. I guess that's what you mean by taking a knee.
Yes, sir.
And he didn't put the other knee on the ground. All right? Maybe both knees should have been on the ground. I don't know. It depends on what did he mean by what he did. Sitting on the bench was one thing, and going down on one knee so that one knee touched the ground was the second thing. Now, these are two acts. See, codification is about looking at what a person actually does or says, because everything is about saying and doing. Saying and doing. So if a person is saying something, you listen to every word that the person says, because every word has value. Anybody who's ever been to court knows this. Every word counts. Be careful with your words. Now, deeds, like so-called taking a knee or sitting on a bench, these are actions. So if a person does something like sit on a bench or put one knee on a ground, and you ask the person, why are you doing this? Whatever that person gives as the answer for doing it, since the person is doing it, you're not doing it, should be a valid answer. Because people have an explanation, I guess, or should have, for what they do. All people, regardless of what it is. So, if he says, I'm taking a knee, or I'm sitting on a bench in opposition to brutality by law enforcement officials, I don't use the word police brutality.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. But that's just my choice. There's no such thing as police brutality.
In your opinion, yes.
In my opinion.
Okay.
But if he used that term, he can explain the term that he used, and that's that. Now, that raises a question. Is that a crime? You know, since he explained why he did what he did. Is that a crime? Is that a correct thing to do or an incorrect thing to do? And if so, why?
Okay.
Because he gave his reason.
Yes.
And whomever says that that's something he shouldn't have done should give the reason.
Including the president?
I've heard some reasons that it has something to do with anthems.
Yes, sir.
Now, as far as I know, the person didn't say anything about an anthem when he gave his reason for doing what he did. I don't think he mentioned an anthem. Did he mention an anthem?
As far as I know, he didn't, but that was brought up, particularly the third stanza of the so-called national anthem, which is purely racist if you viewed it.
Well, wait a minute. No, not. See, let's take everything one at a time, just like you do in court. I always say that everybody on the planet is in court, and everybody is on trial. Based on what? Whether you're trying to produce justice or you're trying to do something that's not producing justice. That's the way it works. I mean, everybody on the planet is supposed to be in that mode now, because justice has never been produced by anybody. It doesn't exist. That's an idea that should be produced. That should be the goal of everybody on the planet. So now, this person said, I sat on a bench, I took a knee, which means, okay, why did you sit on the bench? Because all problems are solved through the process of what? Questions and answers. Why, sir, did you sit on the bench? Why, sir, did you go on one knee so that one knee touched the ground and the other one didn't? I mean, but that's your business. I mean, how many knees touched the ground, under what circumstances? But why did you do that? And he gave the reason. I'm making a protest against brutality by law enforcement officials and assuming that that shouldn't be done. Okay? That's the reason. So, you raise the question now, according to the compensatory code, how did anybody start associating that with a flag, an anthem, money, veterans, disrespect? See, I've written down a bunch of things that I've heard.
Yes, sir.
That's come out of two things. Until this morning, I only heard about the taking a knee. I didn't know about sitting on the bench. everything seems to be flowing from two acts, not from anything that was said, but two acts, so-called taking a knee and sitting on a bench. Now, since then, I have heard something about an anthem. I've heard the word America and American used. I've heard the word country used. I've heard the word flag, money, veteran, disrespect, politics, football, and last but not least, sons of bitches. Now, I'm trying to make a connection between all these other words and a person sitting on a bench, or a person touching one knee to the ground. Now, how did all these other words become involved? That's my question. So I would have to ask that of the people who got these other words involved.
Yes. Already.
Flags, anthems. What is an anthem? What is an anthem for? What is it supposed to produce? See, everything that people do is supposed to produce something.
Mm-hmm.
And that something is either supposed to be constructive.
Okay.
All right? And something that is opposed to anything that's non-constructive.
Yes, sir.
So, if a person is saying that they are doing something in order to do damage to something that should be done damage to, and that is brutality, people who are committing brutality should be stopped regardless of what people they are, then what does that have to do with an anthem? What does that have to do with a flag? What does that have to do with veterans? What does that have to do with disrespect? What does that have to do with politics? Because that word was mentioned, politics. You shouldn't mix up politics, with that type of thing. What is politics? And last but not least, how does somebody get called a son of a bitch? Because they sat on a bench.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave the reason as, because I'm speaking out against brutality. That's why I sat on the bench or took a knee.
Yes, sir.
Now, whom do you ask these questions? Whomever's using these other words, that's who you ask.
All right.
The person that says something about an anthem, you say, wait a minute. Did I say anything about an anthem? See, that's what I mean by watching every word. Every word. Don't skip over anything.
Got it.
See, that's codified science. That's counter-racist science.
Okay.
All right? We have to learn to do that. That's why I keep harping on this.
I see.
We have to get in the habit of the minute a person uses a word that you didn't use, you say, wait a minute, hold it right there. Let's talk about that one word that you just used. You said anthem. First of all, what's an anthem? Second of all, what does that anthem that you're talking about have to do with what I did? All right? Because I didn't mention anthem. You did. So how did that get in it? How did that get into what I did? Make the connection. Because I didn't make that connection. I made the connection with brutality. So what are you talking about? Sir, ma'am, and always be polite. The code calls for you to be that.
The code calls.
You don't have to be saying it in a gruff manner like I'm saying it.
Okay.
But I'm saying you're in a court of law, so you want to do everything according to the correct procedures in order to produce what? The correct results.
All righty.
So pay attention, folks, everywhere that you're listening to this right now. With all of this talk on television about the NFL and all this and contracts and people even mentioning those people are making a whole lot of money. How did money get in it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, raise these questions. Wait a minute. I mean, did I say anything or do anything that has anything to do with money?
Okay.
I'm talking about brutality.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about money. How did money get into discussion?
Alrighty.
when you didn't use the word.
Yes, sir.
Always keep this in mind.
Yes, sir.
And that's not only in relationship to what we're talking about now. That's in anything. If you didn't use the word, you immediately, when somebody uses a word that you didn't use, you say, wait a minute, sir, ma'am, if you please.
All righty.
Explain in detail, even if it takes you 6 months to explain in detail exactly what you mean so that we don't have what? Confusion.
All righty. Now, for those...
See, because we got a whole bunch of words that keep coming up now. Disrespect. Wait a minute, how did that get in it? What do you mean by that? Sir, ma'am, I disrespected what? Am I supposed to respect brutality? And how do I go about respecting brutality since you used the term? Because that's what I said this was about. It was about brutality. That's the key word. No one is supposed to be brutal according to what? Logic. Constructive logic. Last time I heard, unless you have an argument in favor of being brutal. All right? So then you can explain your argument, but that's not mine.
Okay.
All right? So, sir, well, how did respect get involved in this? Respect for what? Or disrespect for what?
We need to move...
And do not help the person with the answer.
All righty.
Once you ask a question, just like in court, don't help the person with the answer. Sit back and wait for that person to explain their position, because you already know your position.
All right. Let's go to line 3. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Line 3.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby, good morning. How you doing today?
Yes, sir.
Still
I'm calling with a two-part question. According to counter-racist logic, my question is, why do we have so many of our males willing to engage in the concept of sagging, which is the pants being worn way below the belt line and having the underwear exposed? And then the second part of the question is, what would be the counter-racist logic for not engaging in that behavior?
Okay, good question.
Well, the logic is you ask the person who is doing it if they'll discuss it, if they want to discuss it, why they are doing it. And don't help the person with the answer. See, I mean, that's sort of like, a normal tendency, you might say. We'll ask a question, and then when the person starts answering the question, because we are seeking a particular answer, or we want to disparage the answer that we're going to get, we have a tendency to jump into the middle of what the person is saying when the person is responding to the answer. No. The concept is you already have your answer, maybe, or have your opinion of what the answer is. So you don't need that because you already have it. You want the person to explain what he or she is doing. If they're willing, if it's your business, to make it their business to explain it. Now, that's the first thing you have to agree on. All right? If I see a person with their pants sagging, I don't walk up to the person. I mean, I see it all the time. I don't walk up to the person and say, why do you have your pants sagging like that? I mean, because the person, I don't know what the person might say, but the person might get angry. And I'm not looking for an argument. All right? So if I see a person wearing anything, I just look and don't say nothing. But if it comes up in a forum where it's being discussed, and that is the subject, see, then I will ask a person who is there at that forum wearing his or her pants like that, and the discussion is about him wearing his pants like that, or if it's a female, her wearing her pants like that, and that's the topic that is brought up, then I ask first of all to speak, permission to speak, and I will put it in the form of a question. Well, why is this being done by anybody who does it? What is your reason? All right? And like I said, very important, do not help with the answer. Don't give your opinion of what the answer may be. listen for the answer. And then when the answer is given, then you might have 3 or 4 dozen questions about the answer that is given. But stay in the question lane, because you're just seeking information. Just like the person that just called and asked this question brought this subject up right now. Ask me. See, I don't know. I don't know what the message is. All right? There might be a message. It might not be a message. All right? But the person who is doing it can explain why he or she is doing it. You can just say, well, why are you doing it, if the person will allow you to ask that question without the person getting angry. Because the code says you never do anything that you think may lead to an argument with anybody, white or non-white. You know, what you want is a conversation. Conversation is not the same as an argument.
Yes, sir.
An argument, I mean, it's going to escalate into something happening that shouldn't happen.
Okay.
A conversation is going to lead to education, where you learn how to solve problems. So if you just walk up to a person and say, you know, in particular, if you give some kind of command, why don't you, or even put it in the form of a question, why don't you pull your pants up? All right. Now, you know that that is likely, or you should know, to lead to an argument, which will escalate into a fight, which will escalate into somebody being dead, maybe. So you don't want to do that. But in an academic setting where the person has agreed to discuss, yes, I'll wear my pants down, all right, halfway down, you know, just above my ankle, my knees and whatnot. That's the way I choose to do it. That's my choice. And I want to discuss that with you. And I don't mind you asking questions about it. Now you have your forum.
Okay, now you have your forum.
Yes.
Let's do this. How about the Wellness Spot? How about Jazz Showcase and Blue Moon Saturday? What does that mean? Well, all these shows are programs that are exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com. And all you have to do is go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage and click on programs, and there you will find the times that these programs come on. And also, there's a donate button that you can also hit if you would like. From TalkTainmentRadio.com, you can do it. All you have to do is just load the app or to your tablet or to your cell. That's radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We are in the 8th area of people activity, speaking of sex, but as you can see that Mr. Fuller will address any of your questions either by going to Facebook.com/Talktainment or by calling 1-877-932-9766 or by Gmail 7, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby @gmail.com. And speaking of that, we will go to line number 1. Okay, line number 1, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hey, I just want to say something first. Morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
The NFL confusion thing. They trying to confuse the white. This is just just my way of looking at it. They're just trying to confuse the situation with the NFL players taking a knee for brutality, against brutality. They're trying to confuse the whites so that they don't support the cause, the reason why they are taking a knee. So that's just all confusion using their media platform to, confuse those people that they can confuse. So take their mind off the real issue of why they're kneeling. All the other stuff that they're attaching to it is just a bunch of confusion. And Mr. Fuller, can you remind people, especially black people, that it's their responsibility to for their safety, regardless, that they don't need to see that every day that we get killed by the police, and for some reason they still think the police is there to protect us. I'm not saying all of them is bad, but you have to take precaution with all of them.
Okay.
Make sure you preserve your life to go home.
All right.
You have to do what you need to do to make sure you make it home. And you always give good points on that. Can you remind people again that it's their responsibility to protect themselves?
Okay.
The system is what it is. It's not going to change, I don't think.
Thank you for your question. Mr. Fuller?
Basically,
to remind...
Simon said quite a few things.
Yeah.
So what's the core of what he was saying? What's the point?
He gave an opinion on the taking the knee, about how the white supremacists are trying to confuse you, but he mentioned the last part about, could you explain to black people about being responsible for their own safety or something to that effect, and not depending on white people or, to take care of you or to make you safe, something like that. It was difficult to hear.
Oh, each individual, everybody is an individual person. You're that more than you're anything else. You're not attached to someone else. You have a mind that's assigned to you by the creative minds. You have a brain. You have hands. You have eyes. You have ears. This is what you call, legs, feet, standard equipment that is given to you. All right. Now, presumably, according to compensatory logic, all of this was given to all of us who are called people, creatures in the form of people, on a planet that has a lot of things on it, to do what? Or what does the code say in response to what was said just now? Mm-hmm. And that is, what are we here for? That's what it comes down to. And you solve problems through the process of, first of all, recognizing that you do. And then you figure out what is the most constructive way to go about solving problems. And that is what a code is for.
Yes, sir.
You don't make a code. You don't say that this is a part of a code until you see that when you try it, it works. Okay. And it solves a problem, or it helps to solve a problem. It might be a long, drawn-out process. It might be something that you can do in a few minutes. And then on the other hand, some problems are so big, it might take years. It
just might.
But every move that you make, with the equipment that you have been assigned, eyes, ears, legs, a brain, you are supposed to be in a problem-solving mode rather than a problem-making mode.
All righty. Well, coming up next, this is what we're going to do. Talk to him at radio.com with Mr. Neely Fuller, and we're pleased to have you with us. Thank you for your listeners. Ship, you can watch and hear the show by going to facebook.com/talktainment, and you can see and hear us. You can also call, as we did have a caller. You can call back, the lines are open, by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com. Now, if you do use that, I have to say that, again, your question will not be answered on this day, but it is in rotation. I say that in particular because I have a caller from Michigan that doesn't like the name to be mentioned, which I am not, and you can do that. But I'm not ignoring your question. It's just that it goes in rotation, and then they're handled on a first-come, first-served basis. So some of the questions may not be on the subject or on topic, but Mr. Fuller does answer them, so they will be answered when you do that. Now, that caller that was just on, you can call back, and the phone lines are open, so you can do that. Mr. Fuller, before that caller calls back, on page 282, by the way, we are in the 8th area of people activity. I believe this is the 3rd week, the area of sex. We got the call back? Okay, let's see here. As we set that up here, Mr. Fuller has written this book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Okay, and he's been answering your question. We have that person back. Okay, line 3. Go ahead. Line 3. Go ahead.
You got me?
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know you had me. Good morning to you and Brother Fuller.
Yes, sir, my brother. Go ahead.
Okay, brother. Let me give a reality check to the human being. The process of understanding or perceiving a common evil has put many people into a situation of the utmost danger. That is exactly where we find ourselves today as a people here in these wildernesses of North America. What that simply means is most people who was exterminated, they never saw extermination coming. They saw something wrong being done to them. They saw themselves being treated unfairly, shot down, locked up. But they had no idea that the people who was doing that to them had plans to wipe them from the planet. That is exactly where we find ourselves today as a people. I do not see us stopping this extermination of us in these wildernesses of North America. So right now, I try to warn people and maybe try to save as many lives as possible. I know white supremacy run the world, but right now, they after us here in these wildernesses of North America. So you might be able to go somewhere, get your grandchild, son out of here, and go somewhere and live your life out. I'm not saying go somewhere and defeat white supremacy. Get that clear. Refugees ain't nothing new. We had refugees ever since these people been on the planet. People ran from Caesar. Refugees come here all the time. It's nothing new. But right now, we are on the dinner table. It is us. And let me tell people something. Think about this. We got a UN. I done said this before. Think about it. You got a UN headquarters right here in the Lounge Den in New York. How you gonna have a UN headquarters up there for peace and justice, and black people getting shot down on camera, men, women, and children by law enforcement, and you got a UN headquarters here, and nobody says nothing except somebody on a talk show? What kind of buffoonery is that? Then you got some black cockers up there and they having meetings, and nobody said, hey, Mr. UN, what about this? I'll never forget Hugo Chavez spoke at the UN. He spoke a couple of days after George Bushwhacker. Hugo Chavez said something so powerful. He said he still smelled the odor of sulfur. He called Bush the devil.
Wow.
These people, their whole conduct since they've been on the planet, it's been a devil conduct. And I want people to just think about trying to save your life. You're not going to defeat these people. You might as well try to save your life, try to help somebody somewhere else some other time. But right now, this is their house. They run this.
Okay. That's our brother from Chicago. But wait a minute, before you go, we call him the extermination man. Did you get that message from that other brother from Chicago?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay,
yes, sir.
all right.
Talked to him. Yeah,
okay.
He know what, he know what time.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure.
The black cockers and these black politicians, that they so sick. I could put up with them if they put black people humanity on the table.
Okay, I just want
to even put us, our humanity up like we are humans. They don't even discuss it. Like, what about these human beings? What you're doing to them?
Okay, my brother.
Not even discussion.
I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that that you got the message, and thank you, for your contribution, brother. All right. That's our brother from Chicago, the extermination man, Mr. Fuller. Let's see here. I got a question from JL in New York. It says this. I recently watched 2 episodes of the television show Ivana Fix My Life, in which Ivana, a black female life coach, attempted to help a black man with 34 children. Since he failed to raise and financially support these 34 children, some of them are now teenagers and resent him. Later, the man revealed, Mr. Fuller, that most of his pride and self-esteem is derived from pleasing women sexually and impregnating them. He felt like being a sex machine was the only thing he was good at. I suspect that many of our young black men feel the same way, which is why we save so many babies' daddies instead of husbands and fathers. Mr. Fuller, what can we do to stop this sexually showing off and teach young black men that they are so much more than a sex machine?
All problems are solved through the process of what? And I repeat this over and over again.
Questions and answers.
Questions and answers. So, before, and this is in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, the revised expanded edition. And there is an entire series of pages listed, because we're talking about solutions. Every female, particularly, and for that matter, every male, should agree before they have the first act of sexual intercourse to ask and answer anywhere from 150 on up to maybe 250. I think I have about an examples of about 175 roughly, maybe more. I haven't checked lately the exact number, but it isn't any limit of number of questions and answers that should be asked and answered by both persons before the first act, the very first act of sexual intercourse. Why? Where's the logic? Because in almost any so-called relationship, when there is a problem that surfaces, one thing that you hear more than anything else between male and female, particularly in these relationships, these sexual relationships, is "I didn't know." 3 words over and over again. I didn't know, and then sometimes I should have known, or I could have known, or why didn't you tell me? Well, you weren't told because you didn't ask. You know, you didn't ask. Do you have children already? How many? By whom? When? Where? I have a list of examples in the revised edition of the textbook workbook for victims of white supremacy. A list of examples in this particular book of questions that you can use before the first act. It's too late when you have the first act. Before you have the first act, when you're both calm and settled and have plenty of time, or you might do it over a period of time, but you don't have that first act of sexual intercourse before all of these questions are asked and answered, so that you don't have what? Confusion. See, that's what all this anguish comes from. That's where all the problems that people have with each other, sexual and otherwise, but particularly in the area of sex, the 8th area of activity. Serious problems. Why? Because they engage in sexual intercourse without having asked and having answered on the part of both parties. Both people have to agree to answer truthfully. Ask and answer. Not 5, 6, 7 questions like, what's your sign? Where do you work? You know, are you married? Usually it's about 15 questions, when it should be somewhere about 125, 150, maybe 210. An endless amount of questions. Is any question that comes to your mind that you think may be of concern later on, after the first act of sexual intercourse? And this will slow everything down, which it should be. That's the solution.
Yes, sir.
I'm being asked, what is the solution to this?
Okay.
And that will get us where we need to be faster than anything else. You have to agree that until we are comfortable with asking and answering, that we know each other well enough or trust each other well enough or I can open up to you well enough before we get naked and get in that bed. Before we do that the first time, we got about 150 questions, and that's just the beginning.
That's just the beginning.
Yes.
All right. We
have to ask and answer each other before we make that move, so that there will be what? No confusion and no arguments ever.
Okay.
Because you've eliminated it in front.
All right. Now, this is the spot where we've reserved for your book. You need to speak to about your book for the few moments here.
You can get the book, the basic book, and also a counter-racist word guide, which is just an extension of the basic book. But most people just get the basic book. That's adequate enough. But if you want to, you can get the other book, which is a word guide, how to use words, how not to use words, what questions to ask when other people use words. And you can get one or the other book or both by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of what's in the books and how to order.
Okay.
producejustice.com.
All righty. You can go to facebook.com/Talktainment to see and hear us or watch us on your computer screen or your phone or whatever device you have. That's facebook.com/Talktainment. You can also call at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com. It goes in rotation, and I will answer that. Before we take the phone call, I want to address this. We're going to have Mr. Fuller answer 3 questions in the middle, or rather 5 questions in the middle of the book. It's going to be on only talk about your sexual experiences, etc., for the following purposes, and we'll have him address that. But before we do that, we'll take the phone call on line number 3. Line number 3, you're on with Mr. Fuller.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, well, I had a statement, kind of a question. So I'm trying to live a certain lifestyle where I'm productive. I'm trying to be productive and logical. And I have a child now, and she's about like a couple of months. I don't want to celebrate any holidays with her because I don't believe in holidays, and I didn't grow up celebrating holidays. So, but on the other hand, her mother, she celebrates holidays. And I'm thinking because, well, I know I don't have the power to tell her, no, don't do it, because I don't run the house, even though I think I do, but it doesn't really work that way. So I'm just trying to understand, how do I logically talk to somebody and let them know, make them understand why we can't continue to pass on traditions that are not logical.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
If I understand the question, what do you say to a person when they talk about holidays? You just say to them what you think. You just said it yourself, sir. I mean, just tell them what you think about holidays. First of all, according to the code, if you go according to that, every day is a holiday. Every day is a holy day. It's a whole day. It's whole. Every day is a day. It's a day, all right? It's a holy day. It's a holiday. I mean, same thing. That's all it is. According to what? According to logic, all right? I mean, every day that you're given counts. There's no days that don't count. There are just 2, 3, 5, 10 days, on a calendar that count, and all the rest of them are just days that, you just do stuff, but those days don't really count. They don't amount to nothing. I mean, they're zero. They don't even exist. But these days do exist. So every day is a holy day, is a holiday, is a whole day. That's all we're talking about here. So what do you do during those days? You do what you do every day, every minute of every day. You try to do something that produces a constructive result. That's all. So it comes down to one issue. All of this that you're doing on this particular day, is it constructive or non-constructive? And if it's constructive how? What is the result of what we're doing? Sometimes on a so-called holy day, holiday, whole day, people get drunk. All right, so you get drunk. Okay? But the question is this constructive or is it non-constructive? Because there's no such thing as in between. Not any minute of any day, anywhere on the planet or in the universe. Either you're going to be doing something constructive or something non-constructive. And that's the compensatory approach.
Okay.
Now, what other people's approach is for what they do and why they are doing it, they can explain it to you.
Alrighty. All right, Mr. Fuller, on page 282 of the revised expanded edition, in the middle of the page, I need you to address this. You said you wrote, only talk about your sexual experiences, and those are in quotations, etc., for the following purposes. Could you go over that, please?
Only talk about your sexual experiences, etc., 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 for the following purposes. This is on page 282. Talk about your sexual experiences for medical and or health protection. That's number one. If you're going to talk about it, you're talking to someone about doing something that's medical. You know, talking to a doctor about how to improve your health. Or, you know, going about having sexual experiences in a way that's healthy. Number two, constructive emergency protection for yourself and or for another non-white person. I mean, and those circumstances may vary, but you think about that. Is this for constructive emergency protection? I'm fixing to talk about my sexual experiences. Is this for a medical reason? And number two is it for constructive emergency protection for myself or others? You know, like in the case you might say, well, what does that pertain to? Constructive emergency protection for yourself or others? Well, it might be something where a female is involved in something that happened that constitutes rape, all right, or constitutes something that shouldn't happen. So that's emergency protection, you might say. You want information. And so you're going to talk about it to someone because something is going on, your sexual experiences that maybe you think shouldn't be going on. All right? Number three, to reveal any sexual experience that involved a white person. You can talk about that. Every non-white person in the system of white supremacy, in the prison of white supremacy, should be willing to reveal any sexual experience they have had with a white person, because that's not on them. That's on the white person to answer these questions of why did that white person have sex with a person who is in a subordinate, a childlike position. See, because that would be child abuse, all right? In the system of white supremacy, when a white person has sexual intercourse with a non-white person, regardless of the circumstances, that's child abuse because the non-white person is in the position of a child. They're not mature enough to have sexual intercourse with a person that they're not equal to. All right? Sexual intercourse is supposed to take place between equals. A prisoner of war is not equal to a prison master. And every white person who has sexual intercourse with a non-white person in the system of white supremacy, in the prison of white supremacy, is taking unjust advantage of the non-white person, regardless of how the two people may so-called feel about each other. They're not in the correct position. They're not in correct position to have that sexual intercourse. All right? That's the explanation for that. And the number four, constructive remarks. These are reasons to talk about your sexual experiences now. Constructive remarks in opposition to anti-sexual activities, such as homo and or lesbian sex that involve a non-white person. You only talk about these sexual experiences if the remarks are constructive in opposition to anti-sexual activity. And what is anti-sexual activity? So-called homo and or lesbian sex. This is anti-sex. This is not sex. According to what? Counter-racist logic. We're talking about under the system of white supremacy now. Now, if in a perfect world, I mean, just like sex, period, in a perfect world between white and non-white, no problem there unless there becomes some type of problem where somebody points it out as being a problem and give a logical reason why. But there's certain things under the system of white supremacy that just should not be done, period. All right? Then number 5, to promote honesty. These are reasons for talking about your sexual experiences now. To promote honesty between yourself and a non-white person with whom you have mutually agreed to have sexual intercourse. That's the 5th reason for talking about your sexual experiences. In fact, you should be able to reveal everything about your sexual experiences except not naming names of any non-white person that you have had sexual experiences with. If you're going to have a sexual experience with a non-white person, for example, and you agree to talk about your prior sexual experiences, you should be able, and you should definitely talk about how many you have had, with whom, when, where, under what circumstances, going all the way back to your first one. You should, before you have sexual intercourse with this particular person, that person is supposed to know your whole sexual history. But without naming the names of non-white people. You can name the names of the white people. That's code.
Wow. Wow, is all I can say to that. Well, when you hear the music, you know that we have come to another end of this session.